Hi, I'm Liz Seeley, founder of Starry-Eyed Strategy, and I help you turn creativity into your greatest competitive advantage. After decades partnering with the world's best, biggest, and most beloved brands, I want to take you behind the scenes to see how the most creative leaders turn ideas into impact. Each episode features leaders from top CEOs and CMOs to founders and authors, revealing how they stay inspired to create brands that launch and last, and how you can do it too. You'll walk away with practical lessons and tools you can use, whether you're repositioning your brand, rallying your team, or planning your next big launch. So let's get started and stay starry-eyed. My guest today is Roxanne Quimby. Roxanne is a founder, artist, conservationist, and someone who I think is one of the most influential and creative brand leaders of the last half century. She's the co-founder and former CEO of Burt's Bees, the iconic natural personal care brand that helped redefine beauty by putting trust, simplicity, and nature at the center, long before clean, organic, and purpose-led were buzzwords, if you catch my drift. Trained as an artist, Roxanne spent years living off the grid in Maine with no electricity or running water, developing a real respect for simplicity, craft, and the natural world. And that mindset carried directly into Burt's Bees, starting with your handmade candles and beeswax lip balm at craft fairs and growing into the beloved brand that we know today. Under her leadership, Burt's Bees scaled nationally and internationally, eventually selling in 2 landmark transactions. But Roxanne, the exit was not an ending. It was a beginning, it sounds like, because using the proceeds from the sale, she turned her focus to conservation, donating more than 87,000 acres of land, then along with millions more to the National Park Service and other causes. Her work continues to protect nature, culture, historic landscapes. And today, Roxanne, I think you've come full circle, returning to art and conservation with hands-on creativity. We'll talk about her latest projects because you continue to build, create, and give in ways that inspire me and that'll inspire our brand leaders listening too. So Roxanne, welcome to Stay Starry-Eyed.
Thank you, Liz.
I'm so excited to have you. Like I said, I think you're one of the most creative people I know. And as we begin, I'd love for you to speak directly to the brand leader listening. What do you hope that they'll take away from our conversation today? What's one thing you hope that they might try or think differently about for their own brand and business?
I would hope that people have a renewed confidence in themselves and not judgment or evaluation from others or from societal norms. But really, the most important thing, I think, for a genuine purpose in life is to really look within and develop the respect for your own ideas, your own creativity, your own thoughts, your own actions.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like it's more difficult than ever before with all this social media craziness. And stop comparing yourself to other people and follow your heart.
Right, exactly.
Which I think you've done a wonderful job of throughout your life. Like I said, I think you're just one of the most creative. And I think a lot of that stems from doing what you think is right. And many know your story, starting with Burt's Bees. Which earlier experiences helped you cultivate this creative mindset and kind of following your own intuition, your own North Star?
Well, I had graduated from art school. I was living in San Francisco and graduated from San Francisco Art Institute. I was, like many artists, waitressing for a living. And I felt that even though I was living in one of the most beautiful cities in America, I realized I didn't want to live in a city. I didn't want to surround myself with man-made objects and buildings and influences. So I remember very vividly, we were double parked, my boyfriend and I. He had run into a store and I was waiting in the car, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that I wasn't seeing enough beauty in my surroundings. As an artist, I have to appreciate my surroundings. I'm very sensitive to them. And I just was looking at the cement and the curbs and the cars and people bustling around, and I realized this is really not the life for me. I was reading Henry David Thoreau. You know, he had done Walden 2, where he retreated from society for a few years and lived in a little cabin. And I had been reading Scott and Helen Nearing, who had done the same kind of exercise in Vermont and then moved to Maine and did it again. And that really appealed to me. It appealed to me, number one, because I didn't have to think about what I was going to do to make a living, because the living was very cheap when you are build a little cabin and don't have any amenities. But it also solved the need that I had to surround myself with nature and what I considered to be beautiful. Yeah.
That makes sense. And how do you think that cultivated a more, I can totally see how Thoreau would inspire you to do something similar. How did that inspire your creativity and your ability to follow what you know is true within?
Well, just the pace of nature. In Maine, we have 4 seasons, and one day leads to another. It's slightly different. The length of the daylight is slightly different from day to day, from week to week. The leaves on the trees, the smell in the air, all of those surroundings were such an inspiration to me. I could just drink it up. It was so beautiful. And it was so simple. There's an old saying, nature makes haste slowly. And it's really remarkable how you leave for a week or two and everything looks different. And yet, if you had been there day after day, you would not have noticed any visible changes. And I think I learned from that kind of pace that incremental changes can add up. And just putting one foot in front of the other creates enormous changes, even though it doesn't seem like it at the time. So I learned that lesson. I learned to be very patient and let events unfold in the same way that nature lets all the changes that Mother Earth goes through unfold very slowly, incrementally, but quite profoundly. So that kind of living was very inspirational to me. And I think also the simplicity factor. We were living on, at the time, we were living on $4,000 a year. So you can imagine how few things we had. And it really made me realize that we don't need much. In a cold climate, you need firewood. We did use a little kerosene at night to light the way. We ate a lot of root vegetables because we didn't have a refrigerator. We had a lot of grains and root vegetables, and basically it was very healthy. We chopped wood, carried water, and that was very healthy too. So we were living a very healthy lifestyle, but a very, very simple lifestyle. And after doing that for years, I realized you really don't need much. You really don't need all the paraphernalia that we believe that we have to have, like phones and cars, and refrigerators. That was the thing people always ask me about the refrigerator. You don't have a refrigerator. Like, right. um, is that the most important thing you can think of that electricity does for you, is your refrigerator? I always thought that was funny because it really, everybody would ask. We had a nice little root cellar and we kept things cool in a root cellar. But given the very quiet uh, pace of life, the simplicity of my surroundings, just a little cabin, very few things in it, I learned a lot. I feel that some very clear truths came out of that lifestyle for me that have inspired me and gotten me through many times in my life.
Amazing. Amazing. And something that a lot of us should do more often. They say if you are struggling in life or you don't know which direction to go into nature, to reconnect and find where you're supposed to be and what matters. I love that. When you think back, Roxanne, to that simple way of living, it's sort of the context that Burt's Bees came from. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? I know for those who have listened to how I built this, like a lot of us do. I love that show and the story that you tell. But going from beeswax candles at craft fairs, expanding into lip balm and lotion, what was the first sign as you went from that simple product line, the first sign that it could expand from products to become a bigger brand?
Well, when we were making candles and honey, which were the direct products of the beehive, it was a good way to get started and to learn about bees and learn about their productivity and what kind of products that you can sell that they make. But it also did not seem to be scalable. Um, I didn't see a way to make it bigger. Um, Honey is a commodity. You can certainly have very nice honeys from unique places and different kinds of flowers, but at the end of the day, it's honey. It's a commodity, and there is a limit to what you can compete for price in the marketplace. And so I felt, and you really need to get into some heavy duty bottling equipment and to keep that going at any scale at all. And that just didn't ring my bell. I'm not an engineer, and that was not something that I felt that we wanted to do, get a bottling line going. But I did my first product that was not a honey or a candle was, it became very clear the product wasn't successful, but the method taught me a lot, and that is, you can buy raw materials in bulk, you mix up big batches, you dispense it into small containers, and you write a story about that. And that really made me understand that this was a viable business, and would have a lot more upside than selling candles and honey. And then, given my perspective on natural products, which I had lived with, gardened with for years and years off the grid, I felt that that unique perspective would add a dimension to this mixing and filling operation that would be an opportunity to get very creative and tell a story about it. And that appealed to me a lot. So I think that was the door, the product that convinced me. It was a complete failure. Um, but it was the first batch and fill that we did, and that was our beeswax boot food, which was a dressing for leather boots that very few people in the world wanted, which is okay. I learned a lesson there. But yeah, so part of it was like, how do you scale in terms of manufacturing? How do you make a really efficient operation, a low cost, just in time operation? And then how do you tell the story of your product? Um, yeah, I learned that pretty early on.
I love it. It's so funny to think about what belongs in the brand, and then maybe, like you said, you try through trial and error, what maybe doesn't, and lessons learned either way.
Absolutely. I've heard over and over that you learn so much more through your failures than through your successes. I completely believe that. When you fail, and if you, even that word probably shouldn't be used, but if something doesn't work out, it's a great opportunity to figure out why. And that's the puzzle. And that's what's so interesting, I think, about business, is that there's so many puzzles to be solved that your brain is always moving and shaking and considering and comparing. It keeps your mind very active. And I think that that's a good thing. It's a good thing to exercise that brain of ours. And
That's right. So many puzzles. I want to come back to kind of finding the solutions to those puzzles, but your point about the creative story, Tell us a little bit about how you came up with that story behind the products. And there are a lot of top companies that'll spend so much money with positioning and messaging and all the things that would, convey what this product can bring to people. How did you think about that, especially since that is what got you more excited?
Right. Well, I I knew needed to tell the story because it had there was a lot of information that I needed to communicate. So I was trying to consider what is the best way to communicate that information. And I came up with humor as being a very powerful means of communication. And I realized early on, because I used it in my own life, is that if people are laughing or they find something that has happened or that you said funny, they're way more relaxed. Their defenses are down. They're bonding with you. And that is the kind of relationship you want with your customer. So, Burt from the very beginning, he just cracked me up the way he lived and the things he said um, were hilarious. And I just had to put that into words and bring out the humor of his lifestyle. And it was before the days of uh, podcasts or YouTube stories. So ours only were in the analog world. They were stories that were printed in our catalog, and every catalog had like a new chapter about Burt and what he was up to. And we turned him into a beloved figure. People, especially with people who didn't know him, people who knew him knew that we were really leaving a lot of stuff out of the story. But we created this lovable character who hung out with his dog in a little cabin in the woods, and the basic foundations of that story were absolutely true, which was important to me because you do need to tell a story that rings true, that is true. And then as a writer, I took the liberty of exaggerating um, the perspective, sort of a humorous perspective on the whole Burt shebang. and, the message there was we are going to talk about something without really talking about it. And so what we were doing was we were telling the story of this guy that was independent. He was living very natural. He was unique. He was interesting. He was different. And all of these adjectives that we were trying to, um, inf- you know, emphasize about our products, we told through the Burt story. And I believe that what people say about you is always more influential than what you say about yourself, particularly when you're talking about product qualities and benefits.
Mm.
And so I would rather have people talking about us and then we are talking about ourselves like, oh, we have the most natural this or that. So we just put this guy up there that couldn't have been anything but natural and told his story, which people were, they thought it was funny. They always read the upcoming chapter because he was always up to some kind of good or no good. And the whole thing was amusing. And I think that was a really important way of talking about what we wanted to talk about with our product line, which was uh, number one, the natural ingredients story and staying close to nature and being simple. But we had a kind of an underlying story, and that is using Burt as our, um, as our heroine or our hero
Mhm.
instead of a very polished, beautiful young woman. That was sort of an indirect uh, comment about other brands that are being sold to women at the time. And that was that our brand will make you look like our cover girl here, which Obviously, that's not true, but also it is denigrating
Mm.
to the other 99.9% of women in the world that don't look like that. And so you're almost shaming or denigrating most women by using these exceptionally beautiful by our current standard women. And so by putting Burt on our packaging, we were clearly out of that. We were not playing that game. And it was it was very clear that we were differentiating ourselves very clearly from the popular lines out there, the drugstore lines, the department store lines. This was something completely different, which is what we needed to, first of all, we needed to say this, we are completely different from that stuff. And uh, that worked really well because people were, they were like speechless when they saw that picture of Burt on their day cream. And we had a few letters from people saying like, how could you? How could you do that? But in most cases, it was understood. People thought it was funny, but the subliminal message was it's not about skin deep beauty. And that was, that we, another time, another way to say go within. That's where the real beauty is. And it was important, I think, for us to have that conversation about beauty because we were in the beauty business. We were in the personal care and beauty business. And we wanted to be clear that we were not going to use the same tactics on women who are the most common uh, customer for us. I think about 80 or 85% of these products are purchased by women.
It does seem too that living off the grid helped you learn to find more simple solutions. Like you're saying, people are just overthinking it, overwhelmed. What's your philosophy now about this idea of unconscious power and simplicity as a competitive advantage?
Oh, I just think it's so important. And I get tapes, audio tapes with affirmations, and I'm a big believer in affirmations. Um, and they're great tapes out there. And I listen to them over and over. They say you need to listen like 28 days before it goes right into your brain cells and reroutes the path um, and changes the way you think. I do that. I
Are
love
there any
those.
favorites, Roxanne? What are your favorites of the affirmation?
Well, I love Louise Hay.
Mm.
She is well known in these circles. She came from Southern California, and she did a lot of work with AIDS people. And she approached disease on a metaphysical level, which I thought was really helpful in terms of diagnosis. Really helpful because a lot of the physical really relates to the emotions and the beliefs, and she addressed those issues, which were really mind expanding. So I listened to her a lot to get rid of like old thinking patterns that you're unconscious of, but you just keep running that loop. And uh, really helpful. She was very helpful to me early on. And they had a function on this little tape recorder I had that had a continuous loop on it. So it would play over and over and over and over and over and over and over all night long while you were sleeping.
Ooh.
And yeah, so I listened to that, and it probably hour long tape, so that's 8 times a night. I probably did that for a couple years. So that kind of repetition is what it takes, from what I understand, to create new pathways in the brain and overcome old irrelevant thinking. And it's kind of mechanical, but I think it works.
Sounds like it
Yeah.
worked, especially with what you're talking about, just this looking at things in a whole new way. And back to your point about Bert's face on the packaging, that's now seen as one of the most strategic, yet underrated decisions, a counter to unrealistic beauty standards, as you outlined it. What do you think about packaging and design today as making statements, not just shelf impact, but do you think that there are packages that are doing something similar? Have you seen anybody who has impressed you like along the same lines?
Well, first of all, I think the 100% rule is biodegradability or reuse of your packaging. So in most cases, that means no plastics. And that to me, that's table stakes. And if I see a product that's been like shrink wrapped and, thermoform, clear plastic, I won't even look beyond that because to me, that's really a flagrant, um, uh, infraction. So I think in my case, my personal opinion, because this is just my personal opinion, that is the number one factor. And that goes along with simplicity. Is I do love simple packaging, simple, useful packaging. Um, and I do like the opportunity to use the thing again. So it's packaged in something that becomes a convenient little wallet or something like that. So those are those are the rules to begin with. And from there on, I'm an artist and I get the message of the picture. So it has to be intriguing to me artistically. And I can't think of any, specific brands at the moment, but that is what I'm attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I always go for that and pick it up and look at it. And, especially like in foreign countries or they do or they don't have interesting packaging and why. Just, as an artist, uh, that's my jam, the message in the packaging. Once you've achieved the non-negotiables, because we make a whole lot of garbage, our industry. We depend a lot on packaging. So it's really, really important that we are leaders in solving those problems. And they can be solved pretty easily. It's not brain surgery, we just have to change the way we consume and what we consume in and be more thoughtful about it.
Mm-hmm. I think you made a big difference in that, just showing people what Burt's Bees was capable of. I think it also helped normalize ingredients that people could recognize and pronounce. That was, coming back to simplicity again seemed like a real breakthrough idea at the time. And now it's set the norm from a packaging and product standpoint. What do you think is the next step in creating brands that do something similar? What is that next step in doing well and while you're doing good, as they say, or being a little bit more conscious about the impact?
It's to me, it feels really uncertain what the future is. The way we have to approach consumption basically is what we're talking about. Is we have, we all can't have our own little planet. And we have to learn how to cooperate and do things cooperatively so that we can do things in bulk and we can save a lot of packaging, we can save a lot of transportation costs. When we were up there in the woods, we would get our food once a month from Boston. And the families all got together. We would put our order in. We'd have two people drive a truck down to Boston to the market and fill the order and bring it back. And then we would divide it up in this old barn. And it was really low tech. And it was fine. It was fine. And it was very healthy. We had a lot of control over our food. We were buying in bulk and it created a community of people that were needed once a month to split up the food and take it home. It was community building. That is probably the way I'm not an expert in any way, but that's the first answer that came to mind, was like building stronger communities that share common values, that participate in making the many hands make light work uh, ethic. And I've seen it. I've lived in small towns in Maine, and I've seen how 700 people in a town live, and it's really clear. The what the dynamics, the relationship dynamics, because we kind of sort ourselves out that way anyway, according to our values. We like to live near people that think like us. Um, I don't know how I got on that, but
I know that it does seem like we need to return back to that CSA, everybody sharing, and I love the light hand saying it. That makes such a difference.
yeah, absolutely. And in terms of packaging, like Burt's Bees wanted to do a lotion for the longest time, but we were not going to use a plastic bottle, and we were not going to use a glass bottle. So there was really no alternative except post-consumer recycled plastic. But that industry was very young, and they needed really big orders, which we could not get near as a small company. And one of the Estee Lauder brands, I think it was Origins or one of their healthy green brands, uh, they had enough volume to uh, gear up those recycled, post-consumer recycled plastic lines, and we tagged along behind them. And so this was like basically competitors in a way, but for the sake of packaging, it was definitely worth partnering, which is what we did. And that allowed us to use that kind of plastic. It allowed us to do lotion. And lotion is the biggest selling personal care product. You have to do lotion.
I
If
didn't
you're,
realize that you went in on it with them. That's brilliant.
yeah, that was really very kind of them, because they were the ones, I'm sure, that were paying for the molds and all of that. And it was really smart of the people that were, making the bottles. So it really helps if you can work, and on a project like that, it makes sense to work together.
Yes. Now, I love that you would work together to both make that more mainstream. On the opposite side, I love also how you would, and maybe this is part of your visioning exercise, say, look out to the category leader, in this case, Elizabeth Arden. Was that, tell us a little bit about that and how that maybe helped from a motivation standpoint.
Yeah, that was part of the Vision Quest era,
Yes.
where the sky's the limit, and my subliminal tapes were always giving me subliminal message of aim high, um and I guess it was kind of brainwashing yourself in a way. So I put that up there. I don't know why I picked on her, but I did, Elizabeth. And we were wrapping soap by hand, and we were just like in the trenches, but had a high aspiration. And I think that's what I think as entrepreneurs, especially bootstrappers, that we have to believe in that. We have to be willing to be in the trenches and believe that we can reach the top of the mountain, because you have to have both of those extremes, I think. And
Well, I
I
think you're
certainly
right.
did. Yeah.
In the project we worked on together, we said the same thing to the category leader, which we won't mention today so that they won't be They won't be notified, but I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant that you would set your sights, yes, on the top of the mountain and the category leader, and here's what we're going to do step by step to get there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Switching gears a little bit, post exit, Roxanne, you conserved land on a historic scale, putting what you had earned from Burt's Bees into, all the proceeds of the business into something shared and lasting. For those who don't know, you donated, I think it was 87,500 acres that became this beautiful Ketadin Woods and Waters National Monument. How did you decide how to go about that and where to continue on making an impact?
Well, I had heard of a group in Maine whose mission was to create a new national park up in the woods. Maine, from Bangor north, is one big 10 million acre woods. And their idea was to carve off part of it and turn it into a national park. And I thought that was a brilliant idea for many reasons. So it wasn't my idea, but I loved it when I heard it. And I live near Acadia National Park. You've probably heard of Bar Harbor.
Yes,
And
I've been to both.
yeah, it's like a 50,000, acre island. And everybody from Pennsylvania North drives up to see it in the summer in 3 months. And it's kind of overwhelming for basically one small island, Mount Desert Island. So we were thinking we would offload some of the pressures on Acadia National Park by creating another one. The land was certainly there. The timber companies were leaving and everything was for sale. So as to me, it seemed like bargain prices at the time. And it was bargain prices. They were basically selling off assets on their balance sheet, these big industrial paper and lumber companies, and moving south. And I knew that what they had to sell was priceless. No matter, it was abused, but by their harvesting practices, but I knew it would come back and if left alone. And I knew that nobody had to figure out how to, create a forest other than Mother Nature and letting her do her thing. So seemed like a natural way to invest in the future. And that's what we did.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, maybe I should have gotten a private jet, but I didn't.
I was just going to say, a lot of founders and business leaders, when they've exited like this, will just, buy a jet, roll out and ride off into the sunset. Instead, you're gathering land, preserving it, conserving it for generations. I also am so excited about your other projects. You recently relaunched a brand called Eco Kids as Elsewhere. So this is a sustainable women-owned art brand. How do you think about and I want to talk about some of the earlier projects, how do you think this kind of creativity with this brand can help people as you set your sights on another sort of business?
Well, what we are doing with the Elsewhere brand is offering a alternative to having family time online. And that is a real problem in American life and probably all over the world. Maybe not, but certainly in American life, from what I have seen, this is a real issue where the kids are on their device and the parents are not happy about it. And there's a big control issue over use. And so and they all say this, and I see it myself in my own family. So what we're trying to do is offer ways of being together and working on projects where the process gets you off your device and into your right brain, which is a very peaceful place to be, and calm down. So that's our message. That's what we are trying. That's our mission, I should say. That is our mission. And we have some pretty good ideas about how to move that along. That one of the ways we did by changing the name of the business from Eco Kids to Elsewhere, so that were not focusing on children, and dabbling into the adult lines of creativity was one of the most surprising things that I saw this year, with adults buying art supplies. And I did a couple of art shows just this month, and I was really surprised by how many grown men and women were buying art supplies and knew a little bit about what they were buying, asking me if I had the watercolor paper. And, they obviously had been getting into the arts, which I was so happy about, because it's such a peaceful place to be. I know that musicians feel that way, and athletes feel that way. When you get into that zone, um, you really can accomplish quite wonderful things, and find peace, and satisfaction, which are very hard to find.
Too true. And I love using those too. We've been painting, we've been using what's our sensory doze?
Oh, yes.
Crayons. So we'll put in the show notes, but everybody should treat themselves to a little Elsewhere art time. Roxanne, I forgot to ask you another question that popped up when we're thinking about you building Burt's Bees into the billion-dollar brand it is today. You were also raising two littles. And I wondered, as a working mom, as a business leader, how did you manage that, to build this brand, to scale it as you did, and also raise a family?
Well, in some ways, it's easier when you're an entrepreneur or owner, business operator, because you're not tied to an absolute 9 to 5 existence. So that if you're working for yourself or you own the shop, you're able to get out when you need to get out and be with your kids or your family. So going to the nurse or whatever it is, what unexpected, expected, you can plan all of that. So I think that in that way it's easier. I never had to go to a boss and ask for time off. I was the boss, so that was the end of that discussion. Um, so so there's that advantage, I think. Having twins is also an advantage. It's far easier to have a set of twins than to have two children at different ages. I will tell you that, because I've seen people raising a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old. They are in completely different worlds, those two children, and the parent somehow has to cope with all of those changes. But with twins, they're both doing the same thing at the same time. So there's a certain efficiency there, so the event. And in some ways it was quite a bit easier. It's like I would make one big bowl of mashed banana and one spoon, and I would feed them, left, right, and then they were done. And they also taught each other a lot. When one learned something, I mean, very basic things, but when one learned, the first person they turned to was their twin to show them what they just learned. So then they both learned. So, and they entertained each other. Oh my goodness. They very rarely would come to me to play. They had each other, and they were fascinated with each other. So, yeah,
The
that
case for
was,
being your own boss and having your own flexible schedule, and for having multiples, because they
yes.
take care of each other, they teach each other, they entertain each other. That's why I had a few. That's
Oh, good.
yes. I can see
You
that.
had twins, Liz?
I have 5 kids. Remember, it's all different ages, different stages, is exactly as you outlined, and it probably would be easier with just the same age.
Well, it's more efficient. I mean, you can only do what you can do. And, whether you have one child or 8, there's a limit to what a woman can do. And the job expands to fill, the time available, I think. Because I've seen women who have 6 kids and they are like in perfect marching order. And there's no question about it. That's the way it goes in this family. And the mother just has to look at them and they fall in line. She was a woman that worked for me up in Maine. And I admired her for that. She had them all taking care of the one in front of them.
Mm.
And it was just the sweetest, most wonderful thing to watch. So, family life, I'm in no way to speak about it. We all make our decisions on the go in most cases.
And do your kids
Tough.
still learn and teach each other, learn from one another,
I
entertaining?
would say, I would say so, but it's they've grown in their own different ways. Um, because they were really different people, completely different people, and the different kind of experience would be meaningful to each of them. They both run our foundations, and they have that in common. But the way they select their mission and how they accomplish that, their relationships with the community, they're very different people. My daughter likes to work behind the scenes, and my son can pull off a cocktail party for 40 without breaking a sweat. He's so gregarious and he knows how to mingle and get people, kind of like feeling good. Um, and that is his superpower. That's how he got the national park done, because he really did do it, not me. I bought the land, yes. He took over because I had alienated everybody up there with my idea. And he had to start, he had to start from a hole in the ground and build trust in the community and build awareness in the Department of Interior of what he would like to have done. And unfortunately, things worked out really well, but he was instrumental. He has a wonderful personality, and I'm a witch.
Oh, that makes a difference. It sounds like you're a good team, though. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I also want
Yeah.
to touch on, Roxanne, when you think about making things happen, you're also working on your Amazon ingredient cookbook. And this is recipes to remind us that the everyday products we use depend on ecosystems and communities, things like acai, coffee. I love this creative way to convey another powerful message. Tell us a little bit about that project and your trips to Ecuador lately.
Well, who doesn't love chocolate, roses, bananas, and coffee?
Nobody.
We love them. And if we don't love all 4, we probably love 3 of them. They're just the most evocative ingredients in so many ways on a daily basis. Thinking about the first food that many little babies get is a mashed banana. It is just, we adore chocolate. Many of us start our day with coffee. So I felt my mom had a cookbook, I think it was in the 40s, that said the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And that was, I used to use that cookbook because I loved to cook when I was little. I'd pull that out and I loved the picture that they had on the cover. But it's so true that the way to many of our, they say food is love. So I've chosen those 4 ingredients and the recipes that the chef down there at the lodge can concoct, and hoping to show that this ecosystem is important for many reasons, but we're not going to quite say it that way because we can talk about ecosystems day in and day out, and we haven't done a damn thing about it. Um, so I feel like we can say that with recipes and evoking memories and feelings, particularly with roses and chocolate, and have a person kind of more open, and then show them that there are ways to help the Amazonian basin protect itself from all the forces that would like to make it disappear. And there are organizations that are doing that. And one of them is the foundation that owns the lodge where I stayed and where I encountered Chef Sebastian, who I felt was a genius. And there he was working in the rainforest, and he was turning out works of art. And I was so appreciative of his abilities, and particularly under the conditions that of working in the rainforest, and being 2.5 hour boat ride from the nearest town. Yeah, so I wanted to document that. So the last time I went down there, about a month ago, I took a very talented food photographer, and she and the chef went through 3 days and made and took photos of 50 uh, desserts, which I thought was astounding. I mean, I could do maybe two a day if the first one didn't burn. And he was turning out like one thing after another, and she was like moving. She was so into what she was doing that she wasn't eating her lunch. She was just going for it because she was working only in natural light, and we were on the equator, so you've got 12 hours. And yeah, and she took beautiful pictures, and the people down there were so like into doing what we were doing, because it was like creating an art form.
Mm.
Because she had a little printer, the photographer. She printed every day. She had a little bulletin board, and sent, pinned up her little prints of the pictures we took that day, and so it became like a focus point for the people that work there, and seeing their work in this light, because she took it out of context because she had amazing pottery to use, and she had a really good sense of textiles to put in the background. And so once one of the creations from the kitchen was treated in that way, and preserved on a photograph that way, it took them into a new realm of respect for what they were doing, because they're amazing. So that is, and the message is, this place is worth keeping. It's worth keeping. And it's a forest with the most densely inhabited, with insects and plants, biodiversity than any place on Earth. And we just have a little bit of it left. And so I just want to do my part. And I want to eat all those chocolate puddings and make sure that they're good enough. Oh my
I
God.
love it. When is it coming out? When do you think your cookbook will be
Well,
ready?
it's going to be a while because I have to write the copy. And then I realized I have to send another photographer down there to do portraits of the people. And I have a portrait artist up here, a photographer that I know, who just she's so sensitive, and when she takes a picture of a person, she picks the most incredibly sensitive part of their nature. And that's what I want to show, because we're talking about a very sensitive part of the ecosystem, and the people that live there. And many of them are small farmers, that are running a small organic coffee farm across the river, or, like farm to table kind
Yeah.
of people.
So it does take the right team, it sounds like, too. That's great. Well, I know our time together is short. I'm going to switch gears a little bit so I can let you get back to your beautiful day. But
Oh,
in the next 3 to 5 years, Roxanne, what do you think will separate creative brand leaders from those who fall behind?
I think that a brand really needs to have an enormous amount of integrity to pass the smell test. I think that with the exchange of information that's available at any second, the thing that holds up to scrutiny is one's integrity. And so the people that own the brand and run the brand, they have to get that right. They have to have integrity as their number one goal of the company,
Mm-hmm.
particularly behind the scenes, particularly the people that work there. And then whatever it is they're selling has to have a great deal of integrity and be absolutely 100% gives you what they say they're giving you. And if you can do that and still have joy, in your life, and tap into optimism and joy, I would say that would be really important. So it would be, if you're making something, that you're making it with integrity. If you're working with other people, you have your integrity intact and they know it. They can trust you. Um, and the relationship and the promise that you make to your consumers, you hold up to those promises.
That's
You
right.
know, yeah. I felt that the wealth that was placed in my hands at the sale of our company was the commitment that our consumers had made to our values,
Mm-hmm.
and that wealth had to be invested in the population of people who had made that wealth possible. And that was what led us to the National Park Service, and huts and trails and opportunities for people to get to those places. That was our way of giving back to the many, many, many millions of Americans who believed in our brand and bought it. And so, the circle was complete. And I feel like that's very important. That's really important.
I also think your circle is complete because you are back to that simple living. Like I said, you're the only founder I know who would sell for 9 figures and still not have a computer. It's so impressive. He does all of this from a phone, people.
That's kind of like simple, like keep it simple.
That's,
Um,
is there
just have,
anything? Is there anything
yeah,
else, Roxanne, that you do day to day to stay creative? Are you still doing your meditation, art, obviously, all of these amazing projects?
yeah. They all sort of, I've been doing a lot of baking, and I made some interesting truffles,
Yes.
and used spices and herbs to flavor them, and that was fun. And it's like making using the kitchen with all the wonderful smells and tastes. That's a great way to relax and and like no judgment, like whatever it is you're doing that is creative, no judgment. That is so important. Just enjoy. You may not make it to Carnegie Hall, but sing in the shower, no judgment.
That's right.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I hope you put that truffle recipe in the cookbook as a bonus. That could be a bonus recipe, like the grand finale. I want to taste those truffles.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you.
Well, we'll switch to a little starry-eyed sparks. This is kind of our lightning round. What is the best or most inspiring book you've read? And that could be lately or that could be of all time. I know Thoreau, Scott and Helen. Are there any other books that are your favorites?
Oh, there's so many. I have so many books. Lately, the last year or two, I've just been very inspired by cookbooks. And not because I make the things, but I just love the presentation, the beautiful pictures of these imaginative foods that are the creations of the people who, art they express their art through their cooking. It's very inspiring to me.
I
And
agree.
I have to have the hard copy, I don't want it to disappear when I turn my phone off. I want it, right there.
Yeah, so you can enjoy it. And what a difference it makes to have that tactile experience of the big, beautiful picture, not something small that you can't really see on your device. Uh,
Yeah.
are there any other brands who you admire right now that's not one of your own? Any others that are really standing out?
Well, I have to tell you that this is like, I was trying to decide if this is like a mortal sin or whatever, but I've been really hung up on Cheerios lately. And, I've just been looking at it like I really love the way they taste. And I'm afraid to look at the ingredients because there's probably a lot of sugar in them. But the fact that they endured like 100 years and people still eat Cheerios like every day, like, how does that happen? How does that longevity, why is that achieved? How is that achieved? And I always love that, like Quaker oats, same thing, they've been around for over 100 years. Like, what makes them so relevant so long? And it's that simplicity, I think.
That's right. Hopefully that'll
So,
be the case with
yeah.
Burt's Bees and elsewhere. They'll be around for 100 more years.
Thank you. I hope so.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. What's one new thing you'd like to try in the next year?
Oh, I'd like to try to go to Sicily.
Mm, magical. And then
I've
what's
never
your
been there.
go-to pump-up song? Like a favorite song that elevates your mood, or you have something big to do. What do you turn on?
Well, I'm not real auditory, I don't listen to music that much, but I did love the soundtrack of Call Me by Your Name. And that movie, um, they lived in Italy. His father was a archaeologist.
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. It's a famous composer that wrote the music.
Oh, lovely. Okay, we'll look that up. Include it in
Yeah.
the show notes, and probably I'll have to watch the movie. Do you have a favorite cocktail or mocktail? What's your favorite
Oh,
flavor?
yes. I discovered it this summer and I got sick on it. I loved it so much. It was a espresso martini.
Those are amazing. And
Oh my
where
God.
did you discover it?
At a little like loungy restaurant in Winter Harbor, Maine. And they made the fresh espresso, and she was a great bartender, and it was so smooth and it went down so easily. And then I had to have another one. And I tell you, that was like, I shouldn't have had the second one. It was so good. I just absolutely love that cocktail. Yeah. But
I
I'm
love it.
only having one,
That's
just
right.
one.
All right,
Yeah.
that's very responsible of you. There, I love that they would make it with all those fresh ingredients. You can actually get those canned. I just saw a canned, ready to drink espresso martini in the cutest
Ooh,
little recyclable can. That's so cute.
that sounds yummy.
We'll see if it's as good as the fresh made.
Yeah.
All right, let's get together for espresso martinis and a little truffle on the side.
Okay. Okay.
Well, just two final questions for you, Roxanne. This has been so much fun. What is one mindset or action you'd encourage our brand leaders to try or do after listening to today?
I would say go out for a 3-course dinner somewhere. Quiet.
Yes, reconnect with yourself. And then who is a creative brand leader you admire and think we should invite to stay starry-eyed next?
Well, I always idolized Ben and Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're kind of like out of the loop these days, but I just really admired that they had a product that was so popular, kind of hilarious the way they named them, had really great morals in their factory, and they were funny as can be, like what's the Doughboy afraid of, one of their campaigns. That was hilarious, you know. and and if you think you want to be the CEO, call 1-800. And it was like they were zany, and I love those guys.
That's
They were great.
a brilliant one. And I think overall, yeah, a lot of brand leaders need to bring back the humor, bring back the fun and the entertainment of all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Roxanne. I so appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise and insight, and especially, like I said, having been and built something that is just this beloved brand. I'm very impressed that your creativity and your conservation efforts continue, you and your kids. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Well, thank you, Liz, and thanks for the platform to share ideas with you and your followers. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Stay Starry-Eyed podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas, strategies, and tools you can use to move your brand and business forward. If you enjoyed this episode, here's how you can help share it with your fellow brand leaders who need it most. Hit follow, share it with a friend, and please leave us 5 stars or a quick review. You know we love all the stars. You can also find show notes, resources, and additional inspiration at starryeyedstrategy.com. Until next time, stay starry-eyed.